sometimes you have to come up against setbacks that level you in order to step back from it and say, okay, there's got to be an easier way to do this.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Jeff Heilman podcast. We've titled this podcast The New. Clearly there are a lot of new things, a lot of changes. We're entering into summer, which is new, and it's a change on the 21st. Many people are ending their corporate fiscal year. Is also happening right now. I got a new tattoo, which is on the back of my neck, so nobody can really see it, but if you're listening to this podcast and not watching it, we are sitting in our new studio, complete with black velvet drop curtains and a couch. It's a much more conversatory relationship here. I mean, this is a dialogue between Jeff and Jessica, husband and wife, about life and things like that. So I just thought it would be really good to finish out our 9 weeks by kind of recapping the podcast up to this point, but then also now that we're moving into the next season and the next phase of the Jeff Heilman project, what does the new have in store for us? Maybe a little bit about how do you face new things and take out some of the trepidation that comes along with new things. And so Jeff, how are you feeling going into this new season and having gotten some podcasts under the belt? Putting the old behind us, moving on?
I think this is a new thing for us to be doing, and it's starting to get to be to where it's more comfortable. We're doing it, and it's working, and we're doing it every week. And Andrew's doing a fantastic job of doing editing and sound and mixing and all the pieces of the puzzle that we just sit here and talk, and then Andrew does we're playing, and then Andrew gets to work and does the hard work. So it's great to see the team come together, to see Jeffrey was in town this weekend and helped build our studio, frame it, and put up the soundproofing and everything. Oshie was excited about it.
Oh, he was so excited.
It was great to see the new place.
Like, you built that. Yeah. And we did. It's a 12 by 12. The ceiling are 8 feet high, and it's in essence, it's 144 square feet of recording space. And I guess my question would be, why are we, we covered in the first episode
but a posterity
why we are doing this, but why it takes capital, it takes investment. Why is there such a need, do you think, for content in today's day and age? Why are people consuming it at such a rate that they are right now? What are people looking for?
Well, I think first of all, I think that the society that we live in, and it's not just America, it's around the world, is more affluent than ever before, which means, number one, they have technology. They're affluent because they have access to technology that didn't exist, whether they might be wealthy compared to their peers or not, compared to any other era in time. I mean, people have access to super high-speed internet in their hand, on their phone, with 4K screens, and trillions of hours of content available. So I think that people have more free time. It's not that they're not working harder. It's that they have to spend less time traveling to and from work, less time going grocery shopping, less time going to restaurants, less time cleaning their clothes or their cars or whatever. So they just have more available time. And as a result, you have a wave that comes through life that says, hey, now we have this new thing called a smartphone. What are we going to do with it? Well, we don't know yet because not that many people are using it. Well, now bunch of people are using it, so now what are we going to do with it becomes, we're going to watch content, so boom, quantity demand drops.
And let's be honest, I mean, I took Madeline and I went to LA and we went to Disneyland, and everyone had a phone out. I was watching kids watching movies while we were waiting in line, and their dad was like, hey, what are you watching? Like let's all share in this content. We're waiting in line, let's watch a movie, or we're doing something, and let's just keep going. So how do we walk through life? We're consuming content, we're waiting in line. How do we go about filtering then? Because I think what ends up happening is, so here's a good question for you. we covered for 9 weeks, we covered your checklist. So I'd like to know first, I'd like to know two things. One, has anybody given you any feedback to wanting to now implement checklists of themselves for
Yes.
themselves?
Yeah,
And then the
we have.
second thing would be, now that you've gone through 9 weeks yourself, kind of evaluating and going over your own personal checklist, have you filtered, like, has it gone from 500 different items to less items? Like, what did you take away yourself from going and spent deep
Yeah.
diving into 9 weeks of checklists? So those are my two questions. One, have you gotten any feedback that people are saying, like, I'm activating, implementing my own checklist? And then two, has your checklist changed since we spent 9 weeks deep diving into it?
Yeah, I've gotten feedback on it and that people are using it or they're trying to do something every day. And really the whole point of the checklist, I think, and whether people use that or they use a calendar or something else, is that can we anchor our attention to something so we can come back to it after we get distracted 4,700 times in a day from emails and text messages, phone calls and meeting invites and changes to agendas and people moving stuff around. I mean, I look at what some of the executive admins that deal, I mean, they're moving 50, 60 meetings a day around for dealing with 2 or 3 executives sometimes. So that's a lot of work to be able to manage all those interruptions. And then can you anchor your attention and come back to what you're trying to get done? And I learned a really important lesson this last little bit in that, you know, are our businesses driving us or are we driving the business? And I think most people can attest to the fact that that's a real battle to try to say, well, I'm in business for myself or I'm running a team or running a business, but are you? So yeah, I think people have gotten excited about some sort of a tool that they could use to anchor their attention. Because if we keep our attention focused on something and pour it like life-giving water on our projects, the projects are going to bloom and do well. And if we get diverted, distracted, don't pay attention, we're not driving our business is driving us, then that's going to end up in a reactive situation to where days, weeks, months, years sometimes can go by and we just drift through life. So to me, the being able to come back to the last thing that you left off doing before a phone call or a text message diverted you into, and now the Facebook feed, and now a YouTube, and then I'm just binge watching shows when I could have been at work getting what I want to get done, or spending time with family, or being at the gym and really focusing on your workout. That potent time that we spend doing something is very valuable and very important, and we need to be careful with our attention and how that attention can get diverted. So with regard to the checklist, I have gotten feedback saying, I'm going to implement this. This is a great idea. I'm going to start doing it. To, I could never do that. To, I could never do it, but is there an easier way? Can we dumb it down a little bit? And then I have other people who have said, no, I do something else. I have one friend that talked about time boxing. He's like, I don't do the checklist, I do the time boxing. I'm not going to carry a piece of paper around with me everywhere I go. And I understand that. I've carried a notebook or something to write on in order to provide a place to get rid of all the crazy stuff going on in my head that I've had pretty much, so I'm 48. Since I was 16, I have had to carry something to write with and an implement of creation.
I remember going with you to the mall, to the Franklin Covey store
To get the
to buy
refills.
the refills.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
there
have-
was an entire store
cannot
dedicated.
handle being somewhere without having something to write or draw or scribble or scratch or just do something with in order to, like, it's like a I never thought of it this way, but it's like a lightning rod. This is like a lightning rod.
Yeah.
It finds the fastest route to ground, which is to get stuff out of my head.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking all the time. My mind is just spinning with ideas and creations and numbers and facts and formulas and quotes, and it just never stops. And I've got to have a place to get that lightning bolt out of my head, out of the sky, and into solid ground where I can release it and then not have to worry about it because I have some sort of record. So for me, the checklist is easy because I just put it in my notebook. But other people, they live a digital life or they live on screens, and so paper doesn't really work. It's less about, I've never taken a position saying that this is what other people should do. I'm just saying this is what I do because I see a problem that says we're not going to get interrupted less 5 years from now than we are right now. We're getting interrupted more and more and more and more, and attention's going to get more and more diverted. So what do you do? What do you do to a ship that's in the harbor and you're trying to keep it safe? You give it an anchor. And to me, the checklist is the anchor. So then another question you asked, though, is has anything changed? And I did. I made some changes to the checklist. One is I went back to the one-page strategic plan, which is your Rockefeller approach, Vern Harnish, in Mastering the Rockefeller Habits. So I've got that gives me the ability to see things over a longer period of time and then chunk it. And then I've got the one that I use for the week. And that's become simpler because I don't have to have as much stuff on it.
So talk to me a little bit for a moment. I know that we had a conversation. Oh, hi. We're holding hands. This is nice because now that we're not across the table from each other.
Yeah, the table actually acts as the reason I like the table in the beginning is because Charlie Rose did it.
Well, sure.
Charlie Rose has this huge oak table.
But Charlie Rose isn't married to this.
Well, that's true. Well, although.
Right. Yeah, okay.
Sorry, Charlie.
We were having a conversation. We were having a conversation last week about having one of the things that you had noticed in doing the deep dive into your checklist was that a few of the things were reactionary, and what you were wanting to do is you were wanting to become more productive. You want more productive type items. Can you
Oh man.
Can you kind of go into that a little bit?
There's such a great story. There's a story that Charles Duhigg tells in Power of Habit, and I'll just cut to a very tight soundbite on it. Tony Dungy was a defensive coordinator in, I want to say, 99-2000 timeline for Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and he ends up getting this new team of recruits that are all 22, 23 years old, and they're all making more money than they ever dreamed of, and they're petrified of losing their job. And so the defensive huddle would get together, and the defensive captain would call a play, and then the ball would be snapped, and everybody on the defensive line would hesitate for a split second, and they would see, like, what's the play really going to be? They didn't execute based on the snap count with a predetermined plan, and as a result, they went like 3-13. They lost almost every game. And so that was the first season, and then Tony Dungy goes, oh, I know how to fix this. We're going to train for them to go off the snap count. And if they're wrong, it's either a run or a pass. It's either a sweep or it's through the middle. If it's wrong, that's fine because you can course correct once you're moving. But to start moving, to get over the inertia of set, go, that little bit to get over that inertia takes so much energy that if you have any moment of hesitation, you're going to get run over, whether it's a pass or not. And so that concept, and the end of that story is that Tony Dungy went on from 3-16. He did a 500 season the next year. The third year, he was in a playoff championship, and he lost as the head coach, and he got fired. The next year, John Gruden took that same team and won a Super Bowl.
Oh, wow.
And then Tony Dungy went and took that same approach and won 2 Super Bowls with Peyton Manning in Indianapolis. So what we see is that slight change in our daily routine, that slight posture that says, am I going to sit back on my heels for just a moment? We're not talking rest. We're talking hesitation. We're not talking wisdom. We're talking comfort zone. And I think it's a real nuanced difference, but there is a difference to it. Or am I going to crank that screwdriver a 16th of a turn and say, no, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it now. I'm going to put the prompter in my mind that I'm going to do. If I need to go went and got my dry cleaning today. I had a 45-minute break. Dry cleaning is a 15-minute round trip. I saw it was on my list. I had a break. Boom, do it now. And now I've got dry cleaning for my trip coming up next week and for weeks and weeks beyond that. Whereas if I'd have hesitated, I wouldn't have had clean shirts for my trip tomorrow. And one little difference like that isn't necessarily going to make the big difference in the long run. But more often than not, what I see among the super highest performing people in business, in sales, what have you, is they have a bias for immediate action and collapsing timeframes by doing stuff right away. And so that's come out of the checklist. It's a long answer to a short preamble. But.
Well, I think that being productive, being reactionary. I think that you hit the nail on the head when you were talking about comfort zone. Like, are we falling back? Are we hesitating because there needs to be an insert of wisdom? Like, because we're searching for, am I doing this correct? Is this the right thing right now? Versus hesitating because of fear, or hesitating because, oh, that's something I don't want to do. And so, as we're segueing into talking about the new and talking about the future, I really wanted to know from you because, yeah, we've talked about it on this podcast. You've had a lot of different jobs, you've had a lot of opportunities. There have been many times when you could have said, you know what, that's scary. I don't want to do that. But what I've seen consistently over and over again is your ability to do the things that are hard, do the things that are scary. And I know a lot of that's motivated because you have to provide for your family, you have to feed your family, but there's still, you've become able to have an MO, have a operating system which says, I'm going to do it in spite of potential fear. I'm going to go and do this thing that is scary. How do you overcome fear, maybe even the physical? Like, I mean, you played competitive golf. You had to stand up in front of, ever since you were 12. I don't know if anybody knows this. I don't know if our kids know this, but this is posterity. You entered your first golf tournament when you were 12. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about that experience, because we are recording these podcasts for our children to listen to, and I want them to hear the story of your first golf tournament. Can you tell us about your first golf tournament and what that felt like, and how at 12-year-old you can go in front of people and like compete and not be, I mean, 12-year-old, kids are thinking about acne and girls. They're certainly not thinking about standing up in front of people and, competing, playing golf. What are you thinking about? How'd you do it?
Well, going back, it was 1987. So this is pre-Tiger Woods.
Yeah.
I mean, Tiger Woods existed, but he wasn't in the news like he was, a little bit later. Like, I'm a year older than Tiger Woods, so he would have been 11. And I was 12, and he won 16, 17, 18, 15, 14, 13. So he won the U.S. Junior Amateur, I think, at 13.
Okay.
But so he was winning tournaments at 11, but he didn't have the national. So I'd never heard of him until I was probably 16 or 17. So you didn't have the big golf craze. Golf was not a very popular sport in the United States.
We watched it every Sunday in my house, but that was just because my grandpa was a fan.
Well, if you had grandparents, and a lot of times it is something soothing that people who are successful want something soothing, and they say yes, and they clap very nice. The deep late night DJ voice when it looks like he's coming up to his putt, and he's got about a 6-foot putt. It's going to break about 2 inches to his right, Bob. Right? So that real soft, subtle. It's a very relaxing kind of meditation on television. But for the most part, Karate Kid was kind of cool back then. So karate, basketball with Michael Jordan was starting to get really big, but not golf. But I just loved it. My grandfather played golf competitively and was very disciplined, and I just enjoyed everything there was to do and know about golf. And I became a golf history fanatic. And I had a chance to take a 6-week course in 1987 and learn how to hit golf balls, short shots, sand shots, 87. And at the end, there was a tournament. There was a 6-hole tournament, and these are kids between probably 10 and 14. So it was right in that age bracket, although I might have been, I remember that I was like the biggest guy.
Well, that's not strange.
But I mean, I was probably playing against, I was taking candy from babies, right? I was playing against 9 and 10-year-olds maybe. And I was 12, so I was kind of on the tail end of what would fit into this kid's golf camp. And we played 6 holes. It was at Shoreline Golf Course in Mountain View, which is still there. Shoreline Golf Course at the time was a Nike Tour stop. So it was there was a professional tournament that was televised, I think, on ESPN at the time before Golf Channel. Golf Channel didn't incorporate until 95. So this is like 7 or 8 years pre-Golf Channel. And I played this 6-hole tournament. It took maybe an hour and 15 minutes to play these 6 holes. And I won my
my group of 12 guys, 8 guys maybe.
Yeah,
I
your
don't know how many it
division
was.
for that
But
age group or
it was
whatever.
a little tournament. It was 4 kids, but it was played on a full size golf course.
Yeah.
And I won, and I still have the trophy somewhere in my room from that. And I just remember that was a thrill. It was just beyond anything that I'd experienced, that I could go and compete in this game that I'd only been playing for maybe 7 or 8 months.
Was there a moment as a youth in your first tournament? Was there a moment when you were like, "Oh, I'm 3 strokes behind. I need to," like, are you thinking about making up points? Or are you just playing?
I was just playing and having fun.
Did you even know what the score was?
I don't think I did.
Were you surprised when you found out you won?
Was, yeah. I do remember one. There was the 4th hole at Mountain View. I just called it Mountain View, but the 4th hole is a par 3 over water, and it's a stretch. I mean, it was probably at the time, a full 8-iron for me to get it 140 yards over water to a pretty big green. But I think I hit 5 wood. So a 5 wood back then maybe went, $180, and the hole was like 140, 150. So I ended up on the tee box of the next hole behind, because I just had way too much club. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I wanted to make sure I wasn't going to hit it in the water. So I hit 5 wood, and a 5 wood hits it really, really high. And I had bought that 5 wood 6 months prior at Oshman's Sporting Goods out of a barrel of new clubs. It was the first new golf club I ever bought. We didn't buy sets of golf clubs back then. I bought a golf club. So I had an 8-iron, I had a 5 wood, I had a putter, and I think I borrowed a driver and a 3 wood to complete my little set of kid clubs. And I hit this 5 wood long onto the tee box, and this is back shoreline. I mean, it's a Nike Tour Stop, so it was in perfect condition. It looks like somebody drove a tank over it today. I mean, it's not in good shape. It looks like a battlefield from World War I. But it was in perfect shape because it was a tour stop back in the late 80s. And I hit this 5 wood long, and then I got up there with a sand wedge, and I chipped it to about 15 feet and made the putt for par. And that was like, I'm ready to go. Like, to make par from the tee box on the other side. And I think I made par. I mean, I look back at it, and I'm like,
you must have done pretty good if you won.
It must have been at least a bogey. But I'm thinking, I'm pretty sure I made that putt and made 3. And I remember the surge of confidence that I had going into the last 2 holes. I mean, we're on the back 9 at this point, or the back 2 in this tournament. And I don't know what got you thinking about that, but I do remember playing that tournament. I was 12. I won it. I got a trophy.
It's more about it's more about you're consistently able to face things that would be paralyzing to anybody else. Like going and playing in a golf tournament, going and doing anything competitively would be something that would normally scare the pants out of people. Being, some people like me, when we first got married, I couldn't even say hello to a stranger because I was just my self-image was at a point to where I wasn't confident in who I was. I didn't know my identity. Like there were so many things that were physically, like you can feel it welling up in your chest, and that I don't
just a gripping.
It's gripping me, and it is almost paralyzing to want to go out and do anything because of fear of being embarrassed or fear of being imperfect or being found unworthy or whatever you might say. Sure. And so the question was, we're embarking into this new season. Like we said, we have a new fiscal year. You have new responsibilities on your job. We have a new physical season. We've got a new podcast. We've got all of these new things. How would you encourage somebody who is feeling the tug? There is a popular scripture that we've gone back to multiple times that says the calling of the Lord is without repentance. There's a calling on all of our lives, I believe, to do something. And a lot of times we ignore that, or people ignore that. How would you encourage somebody to do it anyway? Like you said you want to do it now. How do you do it now? How do you encourage somebody to do something for the first time? When was the last time you did something for the first time? this is how you start doing things for the first time moving forward?
I think you have to break it down into bite-sized pieces. So I thought about this maybe a year ago. I was thinking, how could I come up with an algorithm that describes how to do this? Well, first thing is settle down. Just settle down, whatever the thing is. Take a deep breath. So many people, they don't understand how powerful breathing is. I remember I sat down with, speaking of golf, I sat down with Dr. Jay Brunza. I paid him, I think, almost $1,000 to sit down with him for about 6 hours. He was the mental toughness coach for the golf team for San Diego State Aztecs. And one of their guys, like a year after I met with him, won the National Amateur, U.S. Amateur, and I think he played in Augusta.
Wow.
And mental toughness training was a major part of it. Well, Dr. Jay Brunza was also head of the PTSD ward at the U.S. Navy Teaching Hospital. And he was Tiger Woods' mental toughness coach for 8 years. And that was his only client at the time. And so I heard about this guy from the coach, Coach Ryan Donovan, the Aztecs, who I met through a friend of mine. Dave Morris introduced me to him at a charity event. And so he says, hey, if you want to play professionally, I've got access to Tiger Woods' mental toughness coach. He's on payroll with us. I can introduce you to him. And I don't know what he charges individually, but you could do it. And I was doing well at the time. So I did that. And out of the 6 hours that we were there, I think we spent 2 hours on meditation, 2 hours on breathing. We hit balls for 45 minutes and had breakfast for an hour and a half. And
Sounds pretty good to me.
That was the breakup, right? That was the breakdown of the time that we spent together. And breathing, meditation, self-care, all these things that we're talking about, that's the majority. It's like getting your baseline to be calm, ready for action, not too excited, not asleep, but just right there, just gentle, stoic. That's where you want to be. And it's the ideal peak performance state. And so I think sometimes people get into their heads and they get upset about something before they even start doing it. And that needs to be shifted away. So the first thing is settle down. Next thing is slow down. When we take our time and go, if anybody that's listening to this right now, try sometime. And I've done this before. When you're having an incredibly stressful day, and I'm not talking about a day when things maybe don't go your way, or maybe that is super stressful, but I'm talking about deals falling apart, hundreds of thousands of dollars of personal income disappearing, or millions of dollars of net worth disappearing literally overnight, losing a job, getting fired, losing a business, going bankrupt, cashing in your 401k and investing it, and then having the business that you invest in with borrowed and highly taxed and penalized money failing, having kids deal with seizures and 911 dispatch call. Like, we've had all of that stuff happen to us. Moving and moving again and moving again and moving again and failing in business and getting laid off and having to look for work again and working 2 jobs or 3 jobs in order to pay the bills just so you can have enough money to scrape together to pay rent, 5 days after it was late. We've had all of these things happen to us. And that stress, after a while, does one of 2 things. It either creates a narrative that says, I can't do it, or it makes you really, really tough. And if you're going to be tough and overcome that, one of the things you got to do after you settle down is you have to slow everything down. And literally, if anybody listening at home, you could try this. I've done it before on those really bad days. I'll look at what the speed is on the drive home on the freeway, and whatever the posted limit is, I'll click it, like a click auto, the speed control, cruise control, down like 2 or 3 miles an hour below the speed limit. Well, nobody says you have to drive over the speed limit, although people are going to honk at you if you drive the speed limit a lot of times, at least in California they do. But if you go below the speed limit, you pull over the right-hand lane, one of the things you'll notice is that you're the slowest person on the road. You're slower than all the trucks. Everybody's passing you on the left. But what happens is the aperture of what you can see goes really wide. And you start noticing trees that you never noticed before. Beautiful homes, houses, custom houses, inlets, rivers, pathways,
undulations to the actual freeway itself that's just a blur when we go super fast. And if we settle down and then we slow down, all of a sudden we can take in way more stuff with way more energy and then break it down, which is take stuff and break it into bite-sized pieces. You don't drive to Disneyland in one quick shot, at least not from Silicon Valley. First you get on the 5. First you get out to the 280, and then you get to 101. And then you cruise 101, you get to the 152. You take 152 and you go toward Los Banos until you get to the I-5. Then you take a ride on I-5 and you probably stop for gas somewhere along the way. Then you go from that stop for gas, maybe you'll make another run on I-5 down until you get to Harris Ranch. Now you're halfway. So you're chunking it. You're breaking these things into bite-sized pieces. That's with golf. They say just one hole at a time. Sometimes it's one breath at a time, one swing at a time, one regripping of the club at a time, one practice swing at a time. You break these things down into really bite-sized pieces. You can handle just about anything 15 seconds at a time. Mm-hmm. It's when you try to stretch, oh my God, how am I going to survive 2 hours? Well, you got to break it down into bite-sized pieces. Then once you break it down into bite-sized pieces, then pin it down and say, I'm going to complete this thing. So I'm going to settle down. Then I'm going to slow down. Then I'm going to break it down. Then I'm going to pin it down and say, I'm just going to do this one thing. Nothing else exists in my life except for this one practice swing. Then you make that practice swing. Then you make another practice swing. Then you make another practice swing. Then you just click out. You go into the zone for your pre-shot. You got your 35-second time pre-shot routine that ends up with the ball flying through the air and landing, and you don't even know how you did it because it's unconscious at that point. And then once you pin it down, then buckle down. Make the decision to take action and do it now. And so that algorithm for me, settle down, slow it down, break it down, pin it down, and buckle down.
Yeah.
I don't know where that came from. I've never read it in a book. I've never heard it anywhere. I just sort of
I think you just outlined the
made
next
it up.
5 weeks of our podcast episodes. I think that's great.
But that's what I do when I get really stressed and I have to do something that's scary.
Yeah. I was thinking as you were talking about the farmer, when the farmer's planting the seed, you cannot take a whole handful of seeds and just throw them out willy-nilly. They literally, and I've seen it because I've done enough gardening with my grandma, you can have the smallest little mustard seed, but you've got to pick up each individual seed and put it in the ground in a row. And then above that, and this is why I don't garden because I'm probably the most impatient person. But then not only that, you have to place the next one like 2 to 3 inches up. Like there's a guideline, and if you're going through haphazardly or if you're going through fast, you're going to miss it, and you're not going to be able to have the maximum yield on the return of your investment.
The maximum yield?
Yeah, the maximum yield of the return on your investment. Because you could certainly take a whole handful of seeds and just throw them in a clump, and you will get something. Something will grow out of that. But you're not going to be able to get the full yield of all of the fruit that are going to come from each individual. They have to be placed a certain amount of bit apart in order for them to grow. Like cookies have to be separate on a cookie sheet. Otherwise, they'll all be just one giant cookie and it'll be dough in the middle, right? So what I hear when you're talking about that is what you're saying is like, how do we overcome fear and doing something new or doing something for the first time? We have to recognize that taking one step. What is that movie? What about Baby Steps?
Baby steps down the front door. Baby steps out the bus.
Baby steps up the front porch. Baby steps. So in our baby steps, it becomes more, we're talking to our conscious mind by way of our subconscious mind that we can do big things. Little hinges swing big doors.
Little hinges swing big doors.
Big things by doing things in the moment, slowing things down, taking it a little easier. So what's new then? What do you see? I've noticed you're doing something new. For the first time ever, you're taking yourself out on a date. You're taking yourself, not the first time ever, because you've gone away and you've done things. But I really do
I've done
think
things
this
for a
is
few
like the
days,
first
but I've never jumped
actual
on an airplane.
vacation. We've been married for 27 years. You've been in corporate America for 20 of those 27 years at least, because you had your own business.
Yeah.
You've had your own business,
Yep.
not in corporate America before. And you're actually going to go take some PTO for yourself and tell me how this, tell us.
Well,
What-
I can tell you it is a first.
Yeah.
It's the first time where I've had a corporate job where I was confident enough that I could take time off without causing people to wonder, you know, like, what's he doing? Where is he? Why is he not working?
You have systems in place.
I've got
in
systems
which
in
you
place.
can go and do this thing.
And I've got a great management team that I feel like I've performed consistently for a long enough period that, you know, I've got enough of a reputation that they know that I can get my job done. And I don't know. I don't know if other people are feeling the same thing too, but I've with 9 mouths to feed, not including the dogs and cats, I have felt that if I took time away from a job where I wasn't ramped, that it would not be seen favorably, that I would not be seen in a favorable light. Kind of like, I guess you could take it to the extreme and say, this guy just got here. What's he doing taking vacation?
Mm-hmm.
Unless it was negotiated
prior.
into, and then it's not really a vacation anyway, because you're thinking about this job that you haven't ramped yet, right? But to actually be in a role year after year after year, selling the same types of things to the same or different prospects, but under the same management team who's seen you operate. Because when you're doing startups, and I've done a lot of startups, you don't take vacations. You sell the company and then you retire. Or you sell the company and then you get into a corporate job and then you take vacations, but not while you're building a company, because, you know, 2 or 3 weeks of vacation, unless you're working while you're on vacation with your family, and a lot of my friends and co-founders have done that. Like, they'll go to India for a month, but they'll be working the entire time they're in India. They're just working with the development team over there or working odd hours, but they're working. But taking paid time off and just leaving the business, like, business people that are in business don't do that very often.
Well, it used to. I remember, because I grew up with grandparents and parents that were in corporate America, and they would take a week off every year or two. But they had earned it. Like, you used to have to be on the job for what, a year?
Used to be a year,
and then
you
you'd
get
get 1
vacation.
week, and then 2
Yeah.
years, and you'd get maybe 2. So they did there is a recognition of a set ramp up period that says it's going to take at least a year or so for you
Yeah.
to get to where your accounts are in line, to where your management and style and all of this stuff works together. But
right.
as a benefit in your package, you
Yeah.
will receive a week off. And what I think that I've seen in you for the last 27 years is that in your ability to not be afraid to do new things, in your desire to want to provide and take care of for your family, you've had quite a few different roles and quite a few different jobs to where you weren't able to get to that personal piece in which you were able to say, I can take my paid time off, I can take a week off.
I've never felt like I could comfortably, have a manager that backs me up and says, totally, you're good. You don't have anything left to prove to us to know that as soon as you come back, you're going to start working super hard again, right? To be in that situation, to be working for a company that was stable and wasn't going to go under if I took a week or 2 off, to where the kids were old enough that I didn't have to take the kids with me.
And you knew you weren't leaving me behind
And
to
I knew
take
I wasn't
care of
leaving
a
you
baby
behind.
or something.
I've left
like
you for weeks at a time
Yeah.
to go and do work,
Yeah.
but not to go on vacation.
No.
And then to have the financial resources that weren't reinvested into something else,
Yeah.
so that I could actually go take. So I'm taking 6 days. It's the first
Good for you.
time, and I'm not going with a friend. I mean, I've done times where I go on a guy's trip. I've done stuff with you. I've done stuff with the family. I've done stuff for work. I had a friend of mine that went to a President's Club at the Four Seasons in Costa Rica, and that was like 6 years ago, and I went with him for a week, and that was really fun. But and I've taken a weekend, and this isn't really that long. It's 6 days
Yeah.
but it's longer than a 2-day or a 3-day weekend. And gonna go fly to the south and enjoy the hot, humid summer that I was used to growing up, that I don't get out here in California, and go listen to some music and just enjoy totally unplugging from work for a period of 6 days, which I almost can't even believe that I'm going to be doing that. But, territory changes, boss has got my back, got an out of office responder, and we got money in the bank. So it's, to be able to do that and literally unplug and go to one of my favorite places, go to New Orleans, go to the French Quarter in New Orleans, and stay and just listen to music all day, every day, and
It's awesome.
sleep in and read and paint and take my they're not crayons. What are they called?
Pastels. Take your crayons.
Take
That's
my
okay.
crayons with me.
Well, we were, what I think the other day, I remember I texted you and I said, you're moving out of the season of having to do things to now getting to do things. And I think that seems to be a pretty pivotal, midlife situation, or 40s, 50s, where, you're
Definitely midlife.
you're not having to chase. You get to choose now. You've got a certain level of posterity. Your children are a certain age. You've come along in your career to a certain level, and now you're actually able to look at what you're doing with your time, and you're getting to be at that point to where you get to choose to go on to vacation.
There's something, and this is to the younger guys out there. The women I can't necessarily speak to, but for the guys I can speak to. When you're in your 20s and your 30s, or when I was in my 20s and 30s, I felt like I was all over the place. I do one job, then I do another job. I wasn't sure, do I take a day off? But then I take a day off and I feel guilty. Then I work really hard and I feel guilty because I'm working too hard. I spend time with the family and I feel guilty because I'm not at work. Then I spend time at work and I feel guilty because I'm not with my family. And it's just this trying to get into a rhythm, just desperately trying to find a way to get into a rhythm to where, is it 50 hours a week? Is it 60 hours a week? Is it 80 hours a week? Is it 100 hours a week? Is it 100 hours this week and then 50 the next week? How do we get into a rhythm so that you're doing everything that you can do to take care of your family, but you're also getting to live your life? And for a lot of years, I wasn't living my life. I was alive and I was living. And part of that is not great because you end up with your business running you, like I was talking about earlier. But part of it is necessary.
Yeah.
To just do whatever it takes to get the rhythm going. And anybody who listens to this podcast who's made millions of dollars knows exactly what I'm talking about. There is no work-life balance.
Mm-hmm.
It does not exist in a stagnant form.
Right.
Like somebody standing equally balanced on 2 feet at attention. Anybody who's doing that is not moving forward. They are standing at attention. And on the treadmill of life, if you're standing still, you're going backwards.
Right.
So there is a balance that comes in movement, in the rhythm of left foot, right foot, back and forth, and keep the thing moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
And you rest when you need to rest because your body will give out if you don't. And then you're back at it in the morning. But if you can keep that flywheel going over a period of time, eventually it'll get to the point where you can spin that flywheel with one finger. It's just one finger to keep it going. It's really easy. And I wouldn't say that I'm at that point in my career yet, but I can see that the flywheel is starting to give less resistance than it used to, because I've just been working my ass off for 35 years. I mean, 35 years I've been putting
I'm probably dating myself, but for those that are of the younger generation, but it makes me think of remember the kids had the Nintendo, they had the Wii, and on the Wii you have the balance board. And the balance board would do your cob, your center of balance. And you would see, because it would be like, okay, now try to stand still, as long, because they're gonna track your cob. And so you're standing there and you're looking at the screen and you're seeing this little green and it's going like all over the place. And you're like, but I'm just standing still. But in order to be standing still, you're moving all over the place. Your center of balance is all over the place. And I think that what people are maybe what they're misinterpreting is this work-life balance as work-life rest. You know, oh, you have to have, like, when you're rested, you're not going anywhere, like you said. But with balance, you're actually moving. It's more about finite movement in
it's
what
left
appears
foot, right foot.
balanced. It's very finite in the movement. It's not these grand gestures. You know, we don't want to have to. We're not going to achieve balance by, you know, working at a job for 2 months and then taking 3 months off of vacation by doing these grand gestures of, well, I better get back in balance. So, I mean, what do they say? I'm still going through these dieting. I'm going through Noom and going through the psychology behind
Yeah.
why we do what we do. You know, the number one thing they say is don't binge and like don't not eat and then just go binge food, because you don't want these grand gestures, and or
Yep.
your body's not going to respond. Your body's not going to find the balance it is required by doing grand gestures of movements. It encourages you to eat
Yeah.
throughout the day.
Successful
It's
people.
finite it's finite movements over and over and over again in which you will find your greatest balance.
I don't know if you've ever noticed, but imagine driving and you're in the second to the fastest lane, whatever that one is, lane 3 maybe. I don't know.
Sure.
And you can hear a car coming up behind you. And you know, because the rate at which the sound changes and gets louder, that they're going much faster than the rest of the traffic, right? This is not someone who's creeping up on you on your left-hand side. This is someone who is lane splitting with a Honda Civic, right?
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And have you ever noticed how the cars look like they've been in 15 accidents? They sound like a motorcycle.
Yeah.
They're lane splitting like a motorcycle, but they're actually, nothing against Honda Civics, but they're in cars that have just been beat up, and they are extreme.
Yes.
They accelerate extremely. They swerve extremely.
They
They brake
brake.
extremely. They honk extremely. Everything they do is stop, go, full stop, full go, full stop, full go, full accelerator, full brake, full swerve left, full swerve right, full middle finger,
Yeah.
right? And as we've gotten older, and perhaps maybe it's testosterone, or I'm not eating as much, or I'm heavier than I used to be, but I've noticed that I tend toward avoiding extremes.
Mm-hmm.
Success avoids all of one or all of the other. Overzealous Christian Republican right-wing conservative, or overzealous left side
Yeah.
Democrat, Black Lives Matter, and
Yeah.
oh my gosh, we're going back to
Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah.
that stuff. Anywhere you find successful people, at the country club, at a restaurant, in fine dining, in a Mercedes, in a nice neighborhood, that neighborhood avoids extremes. It's not super noisy.
Yeah.
It's not super tight, larger yards that provide a little more space between neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
Larger trees. Yes, it takes some money to live in places like that, but it doesn't take money to recognize that success tends to be more centered, more in the middle, and that if we can get our minds and our nervous systems wrapped around the idea of avoiding extremes, not getting too excited, not getting too depressed, things happen. We had some things happen at work over the last couple of weeks. A little rough. A lot of people lost their jobs. On the other side, we have people that had promotions. Hey, excited for the people that have promotions. Certainly sorry for the folks that aren't going to be with us this next fiscal year. But at the same time, you can't let
Well, I think
yourself get wrapped
for
around
me,
the axle
it
about either one of
boils
those two
down
things.
to harmony. It boils down to blessed be the peacemaker, for they shall inherit the earth. That what we're attempting to achieve, and why, is a form of a harmony that we are able to go then therefore and have something to give to others. Because when we're
100%.
doing extremes, we're using all of our energy
We
to
don't
take
have
care of
anything left
us.
for anybody else.
We're using all of our energy to go all the way in over here and all the way in over there and all the way over here and all the way over there. And so a lot of times we'll become desensitized to what does our neighbor need? What does our community need? And so it would appear that that's why we see so many people that are in politics that are much, much older. And we see so many people that
they've
are
settled
on
down.
the Chamber of Commerce that are much, much older, because they've come to this point to where they've realized that it's the finite movements which create and foster balance. And it's this striving for harmony and for a peace within ourselves and a peace within our home, so that we're able to then therefore not just think about our survival according to our needs and being able to share with others. So I'm really excited. I'm excited about this new season that we're going into. I'm excited about our children who are growing up, and you know, our youngest is going to be 6, and so she's definitely not in the baby phase, and she's
Yeah.
getting to be more exploratory and just being able to sit and to see and to really enjoy this newest season of what's to come. So
It's a new season. We're doing a new season of the podcast.
yeah,
We're in I think this is episode 12 or 13 now.
Woo!
And we've got our new studio, which is
Yeah.
great. Thanks to Jeff and Matto and Andrew and Osh and Teddy
All the
and Ness
kids.
and Jessica for working out.
shout out to Noah and John for
Noah and
helping
John
with
for
all
helping.
the advice on sound and lights. And
And it's a new fiscal year for us at work, and going to take vacation. This is the first time, I think it's the first time I've taken vacation by myself, where I didn't have to work. So I'm 48, first time for everything, right?
well, I certainly hope that for the next episode you bring us back something, or tell
Yeah,
us some
some beignets,
stories. I hope we get some new
Chocolate covered pecans. or
yeah,
something.
new stories. We can put a little alligator head on the table. I'm kidding.
Yeah. But for those out listening, watching at home or in your car or wherever you're at work, Jessica and I love bringing success doctrine and good ideas and things that have worked and things that haven't worked that we've had to overcome and figure out. We love doing this. We love doing it with our children. This is a family affair, and to be able to try to be encouraging and to let you all know out there that we wake up early and go to the gym. We don't want to do it. I don't think I lifted this week. I think I'm off my bandwagon this week, but I was lifting last week. Jessica's been up going to the gym. We got to tear ourselves out of bed. We got to force ourselves to go to bed early so we can get up and go to the gym. We work exceptionally hard. We sit and do planning sessions week after week after week after week, planning what we're going to do. What are we doing for vacation? What are we doing for this birthday? What are we doing for that birthday? What are we doing for summer? What are we doing for fall?
Who's coming in town?
Who's coming
going?
in town? Who's going? What do we need to do? How do we do the studio? How do we get this built? Madeline needs a bedroom, so we got to move to the studio so that she can have her own room because she's at that age. So, and we're constantly focused on serving, driving for your job, for myself and my job. But this is play for us.
For sure.
We get to sit and just share what we've learned and talk about what we're struggling through and what we've recently overcome. We're not going to talk about what we're going through right now. We'll talk about what we've gone through, what we've been through, and kind of how it can help others by what lessons learned or things that we've tried and failed and just said, okay, put this to bed, right? I'm not going to make it in professional golf. I just put 10 years into it. Didn't work. I gave it everything I had, left everything on the table, and okay, now it's on to country club golf and getting my amateur status back, right? But it's okay if you fail in a job. It's okay if you get fired. It's okay if you get laid off. I've had some recent things change in my work where I was just in a role that was just super hard. I worked as hard as I could. I put 15 months into it, and there were some changes made that I didn't necessarily understand at the time. But now with some perspective, I am relieved because I don't have to be spending so much time doing something that is just really out of my element and really hard. And sometimes you have to try those things, and sometimes you have to come up against setbacks that level you in order to step back from it and say, okay, there's got to be an easier way to do this.
Right.
Sometimes you have to lift the heavy weights.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you have to get yourself under the bar, which is a phrase for bodybuilding and lifting. you got to get yourself under the bar and you got to get yourself to the point where you're about to wreck. Because if you don't, it's that last lift, it's that last rep where all the force on your nervous system to grow stimulates the lobster to, go under a rock and ditch his shell and build a new shell, or the snake to shed their skin, or whatever. It's all throughout nature that the impetus for growth is discomfort and pain, and a lot of times setbacks and temporary failures. And so if you're going through something like that right now, it's excruciating at times. But it's necessary. Some people say, well, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Well, that's nice to hear. Not really, from people, because it's so cliche. But to think about, what's the alternative? Why don't we take the contrarian view and say, what's the alternative? What's the alternative to not getting uncomfortable? Oh, you die. But before you die, you look back over your life and you imagine who you could have been.
You haven't done anything. You didn't go anyplace. You didn't embrace the journey. But on that note, I would hope that people that are listening, that are watching, would see that you don't have to go through it alone. The thing that I love the most about this platform, exactly.
Do we have our text number?
Text the number on
Andrew,
the screen.
Text the number on the screen in the notes. We'll respond.
Yes, we will. And I love this platform. I love that it could be 1:00 in the morning and you could be looking for something to fall asleep, looking for something to encourage you, and you can pop on a YouTube, you can pop on a podcast, you can put your headphones on. You could be in a meeting
and check out our YouTube shorts,
exactly.
which Andrew puts captions to, so you don't even have to have the audio on, and you can still consume content.
But you don't have to go through it alone. You don't need to do this life thing alone. That we're here.
We don't do it alone. We got a big team.
Before we even had a community, before we had a church that we really felt a part of, we were reading books, and it was like it could have been written 200 years ago, but that author, for what I needed to hear at that time, was exactly the buddy that I needed in order to get through that thing, in order to get through that season. So in this next chapter for our lives, in your next chapter for your life, I hope that you can feel that you are not alone. You do not have to do it alone. Please text us. Please reach out to us on LinkedIn. Please reach out to Jeff or myself on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, whatever. And let's take this next 6 months, because that's another thing. Is like we now have 6 months. We're halfway through the year, just about. We've got 6 months left. We can end this year out in 2023 on a win. Together.
Yeah, we're ending every month, every week on
every
a win
week
that we
on
ship
a
a podcast. I mean,
absolutely.
Just getting this stuff out the door is an ordeal.
Yeah.
And so you can stack these wins and keep stacking them and keep growing, and know that you're doing it in a community together with people who, through the medium of television, through the medium of the internet webs and podcasts, that you are part of a tribe.
Yes.
Of people that are committed to growth and contribution.
So thank you guys for tuning in this evening. We are so glad today, whatever time of day it is that you're listening to this, we're so glad that you joined the Jeff Heilman Project. You tuned us on, you stayed listening, you shared it with your friends, you liked it, all these great things. We are so glad to have you being a part of our family. So thanks for being a part of the family, and we will see you next episode.
Have a great day.